Welcome back. It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Dan Buckshi. He is the CAO, Chief Administrative Officer of San Luis Obispo County, which means what?
It means that I'm the person who's responsible for getting things done.
Okay. The supervisors forget them. It's the CAO that does it all.
Well, don't forget the board, definitely.
But do explain, because there is a very valid distinction between the elected supervisors, who in SLO County are full-time positions, and the CAO, which is a different beast.
Yeah, my view on it at the macro level is the Board of Supervisors is voted into office to carry out the will of the people. And it's my job as staff to the board to carry out the will of the board.
Right.
So whatever issue is before the board, what a majority of them vote on to do, then it's my responsibility to work with the organization to carry that out.
And there's no doubt the county is a large organization. It's a large employer. How many folks work for the county?
We're actually the largest employer in the county.
Wow. Even larger than Diablo?
Yes.
Wow.
Larger than Cal Poly.
Right. Okay.
We have 2,500 full-time employees. At any given point, we have another 300 to 500 temporary employees, depending upon the season. We have a budget of a little over $500 million.
It's very significant. This is a good mid-sized county. I mean, you're doing some real work here trying to serve the needs of the Central Coast.
Yeah, we're at I think, a great size as far as a county goes. We're large enough to be professional, but small enough to be personable.
Right.
Where we're out in the community, we know the folks, we can meet firsthand with individuals and community members on the issues, but yet big enough where we have infrastructure and a real professional organization.
It's remarkable that any county can come to a consensus on anything, but there's one area where the county did come to consensus, and that was the desire to create what's known as the Pismo Preserve. I must say, Adam Hill, supervisor, gave a specific shout out to you for the hard work that you did to make this project happen. Tell us about the Pismo Preserve.
Well, I think it's a great asset for the community, and it was really nice to see how the community came together on this. My role was really fairly minimal, quite frankly.
Not according to Supervisor Hill. He said your role was pivotal, but be that as it may.
Yeah, the Land Conservancy really drove this.
Right.
I think in roughly a 4 to 5 month period, they raised the $12 million. My role was really to help facilitate the discussion and put the right folks in touch with one another to help make this happen. The board had granted a little over $1 million back in May, and then there was a unanimous vote just a couple weeks ago to contribute the remaining $400,000, which essentially sealed the deal. Right.
The key to acquire the property, to turn it into a preserve, was the requirement of raising $12 million. That's a real amount of money. And there was a significant amount coming from the state, about $8 million, some money raised from foundations, but you did need to close a gap, like you just said.
That's right, and I think the local citizens and businesses really stepped up as well. There was about a little under $2 million that was raised locally from private entities, individuals, or organizations. And then, the county came in to seal the deal at the end. Quite frankly, there was an effort a few years ago to preserve the Wild Cherry Canyon area, which would have connected Avila with
Senator Blakesley's wife was very involved in that.
Yeah, and that didn't come together, and it was unfortunate. So I think there was even a greater sense of urgency placed on this property.
So briefly, what's the property going to look like?
That's being worked on, but I think it'll be magnificent. A lot of trails, a lot of opportunities for recreation with spectacular views.
About 900 acres. It's adjacent to Pismo Beach, Pismo Creek watershed. It's in San Luis County. Scenic views, like you said, of Shell Beach, Pismo Beach, and it will really be a treasure for generations to come.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to the ribbon cutting next year.
No doubt. When we come back, I want to continue our conversation, talk about the Affordable Care Act, talk about the drought. We are speaking with Dan Buckshi. For our viewers on HLN, thank you for joining us. For other viewers, we'll be right back. So, sir, let's talk about the Affordable Care Act, what's also known as Obamacare. A lot of things can be said about it, but it's hard to deny that the Affordable Care Act was successful in its rollout in California. That's not to say that there weren't issues, but when you kind of look at per capita signups, California's at the top of the list. What about here in San Luis County or on the Central Coast generally? What can you tell us?
It's been a lot of outreach, and as you mentioned, there are folks who agree with Obamacare, those that don't. regardless
Right.
of one's opinion, our role at the county is to implement it. We don't have a choice of whether we like it or not. It's to implement it. And that's what we've done. We've had roughly 30,000 people apply for coverage, whether it's through Medi-Cal expansion or through Covered California.
So I think about this county, about under 300,000 people, means 10% of the county signed up. I mean, that's huge.
That is huge. That's a lot of people who were uninsured who now have coverage.
And I understand if you look at California generally, I think the uninsured rate went from 22% to 11%. What about the breakout in terms of those that went through the exchange and those that went through the expansion, the Medicaid Cal expansion?
In round figures, it's about half.
Half, okay.
Yeah, give or take.
And what about the Latino population? Because we know that Latinos in California are disproportionately uninsured. We know that the Latino population in San Luis is about on par with the rest of the state. We also know that early on Latinos were not signing up, but we heard anecdotally that at the end more Latino signups.
Yeah, and there has been a big push to reach that part of the community to get those folks enrolled. I don't have the exact figures at this point in time in terms of the demographic breakouts, but certainly that's been a focal point.
We also know that part of the challenge with Medicaid, expansion or otherwise, is that California does not have a particularly high reimbursement rate. In fact, it's 50th out of 50. And so have you seen those that have jumped on board with the Medicaid expansion or are already under Medicaid face challenges to find providers?
Yeah, that's a challenge overall, even before the expansion
Right.
of the Affordable Care Act. Additionally, it was challenging for us on the Central Coast. Although we have a high cost of living being coastal California,
Right.
our reimbursement rates are based upon that for a rural county,
Right.
which is lower than other areas, which makes it particularly challenging to attract and retain providers. So yes, we are seeing that, and that's a portion that the medical community is trying to address.
I want to also talk about the drought. The drought impacts the Central Coast in a variety of ways. You know better than I that the Central Coast has a significant number of employers that work the fields, agriculture, they hire. We also know that we have a good sized population that needs water, is thirsty. How is the Central Coast, in your eyes, managed through this now 3-year drought, could go on 4?
That's a challenge. It's a huge focal point for us currently, and I really view it in two ways. There are the issues that are related to the drought in the short term, with the shortage of rain and a lot of near-term emergency type of responses that we're working on. And then there's the longer-term challenges of imbalances between
Right.
supply and demand, which are frankly exacerbated by the drought. In terms of what we're looking at, there are wells throughout the county that are going dry. We've had reports of 50 or more individual wells that have gone dry.
And let's talk about the wells, because we know, especially in North County, there has been, let's just say, some controversy about the wells.
Absolutely.
The Paso Basin, I think legislation was ultimately passed, I think it was signed to create a water district, but much in a grander sense, we know that California is now looking to regulate groundwater. Starting with local control, potentially moving to state control if there's an issue with local control. How's that going to play out here?
Yeah, stay tuned over the next few
Right.
months. We will be debating that rigorously, I would imagine, as this unfolds. On October 14th, we'll be holding a water information session at the Board of Supervisors, which we will be running through the details of the new state legislation, what that means for us locally, and what our options are for how to implement. Obviously, there was Assemblyman Asajian's bill, AB 2453, specific to the Paso Basin, that we'll be looking to figure out how to implement that in order to allow folks to implement locally.
And it would seem to me that that bill, it was almost prescient when you look at the ultimate legislation passed, because that bill was looking at local control of the groundwater basin. So it seems like it kind of fell in nicely.
It did, and as you mentioned, that bill was introduced before some of these other
Right.
bills came about, and the feedback we had received from Sacramento is we were doing the types of things that Sacramento wanted to have done.
But you know much better than I that even that bill went through machinations that no one anticipated, and your board went, left, right, and center trying to figure out what it wanted. But in the end, cooler heads prevailed, could you want to say, and it all worked?
Yeah, now it's a matter of implementing, but I think the community did come together to try to figure out how to manage this.
Thanks for joining us. He is Dan Buckshi. He is the CEO of San Luis County. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.
Through the first enrollment period, how much did the opponents of the Affordable Care Act spend on television advertising? A, $129 million, B, $204 million, C, 347 million, or D, 418 million? D. Those opposed to the Affordable Care Act expended 418 million on television commercials.
Welcome back. It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Pavro Ogrin. He is the new general manager of the Oceano Community Services District. Congratulations on your new position. What made you move over to Oceano?
Well, first off, thanks for having me here, Brad.
Of course.
Oceano is involved in a number of pretty interesting water issues right now, both groundwater basin issues as well as opportunities for recycle water.
Right.
And obviously we've been working with the county for the last few decades. I've been one of the individuals very involved in water throughout San Luis Obispo County.
Right, you headed up Public Works in the county.
And with the county, we work with all of the cities and all of the communities in the county really on water-related issues. So I've been working with Oceano on and off on various issues for a couple decades now, and the things that they're facing in the future are really interesting. I'm excited to be down there.
And you're entering at a time of a bit of tumult, although I'm sure you're hopeful that the tumult is behind. There have been several GMs over the last few years. Things are looking better?
Certainly. You know, they are challenging positions to fill, and I think because the relationship I've had with Oceano for so many years, that it's a good, partnership for success.
And what's interesting about Oceano is, like you said, groundwater is a significant issue for the CSD. The county's been so focused on the Paso groundwater basin, but there's the Santa Maria groundwater basin. I guess because it's adjudicated and so we're in better shape? In terms of knowing what's going on in the future?
Yes, that's right. There has been more work done on the Santa Maria groundwater basin. It's gone through the court deliberations, and that really is the judicial approach to managing a groundwater basin. So the basic structure of groundwater management exists for the Santa Maria groundwater basin, and it's currently being developed for the Paso basin.
As we look forward, we also know we're facing a significant drought in San Luis Obispo County, in the state of California.
Yes.
Are you impacted by the drought as the GM of the CSD, or are those really separate issues?
Oh, certainly we are impacted. Oceano is impacted. It's a big part of my job. Oceano is a participant in the state water project, so even the cutbacks in state water deliveries, because this is a state water
Cutbacks?
drought.
I mean, how about elimination until recently?
95%
Right.
cutback is about almost as bad as it can get, yeah. So there's concerns about Lopez, because Lopez is going down. It's relatively healthier than a lot of the other reservoirs in the state, but it still only has a couple years supply left if the drought persists. So one of the important efforts in South County right now is all the municipalities, Arroyo Grande, Grover, Pismo, Oceano, we're sitting down with the farmers as well, because the water supply really is a shared resource, and it's impacting both the cities as well as the agricultural community.
Surely you know about Proposition 1, the water bond.
Yes.
A lot of money, arguably, for certain projects, about $7.5 billion. Oceano in line for any dollars should the bond pass?
A lot of the focus in our county has been on the regional efforts.
Okay.
So it's what is it that Oceano can do with the other municipalities and
Right.
the cities and the county in order to develop projects that then meet the state standards. And the important point on the funding from the state and the infrastructure needs is also that the approach is to integrate different water resource issues. It's not just water supply, but it's also water quality, and how can we develop projects that meet multiple needs and the needs of the environment and agriculture.
Right. You mentioned that Oceano has some exciting developments on the recycling front, and there is some money set aside, maybe about $1 billion or just under $1 billion through the bond. Is that something you're going to look towards should the bond pass?
So the lead in South County is the South County Sanitation District.
Yes.
And Oceano and Grover and Arroyo Grande, and then also Pismo on a separate front. All of them are going to be looking at how is it that we can work together in order to help move recycling forward in South County.
His name is Pavro Ogrin. He is the new general manager of the Oceano Community Services District. My name is Brad Pomerance. I want to thank you so much for watching California Edition. We're going to send you back to HLN.